So we arrived at the Gurudwara.
Let me tell you, it was a sight to see. I thought I was going to a place of quiet prayer. Instead, I walked into what looked like the world's happiest factory. People were everywhere, all busy doing something. No one was asking, "Who are you?" or "What is your caste?" The only question was, "Brother, can you help roll some rotis?" I saw a big-shot businessman, probably owns half of Mumbai, sitting on the floor. He was trying to make a round roti. His first one looked like a map of Australia. His second one looked like Sri Lanka. He was laughing so hard, tears were rolling down his face.
It was a beautiful chaos, a wonderful mess of humanity working together. Everyone had a job. Some were chopping onions, some were stirring giant pots of dal, and some, like my new businessman friend, were failing at making rotis. I decided to join the roti making team. I thought, Kapil, you're a Punjabi boy. This is in your blood. I picked up the rolling pin with confidence. My first roti came out perfectly square.
The uncle next to me patted my back and said, "Don't worry, son. In God's kitchen, even square rotis fill a stomach." We all laughed. It felt less like a religious duty and more like a family picnic where everyone is a little bit clumsy, but full of love.
The energy was incredible. You could feel the joy in the air. People from all walks of life, rich and poor, young and old, were sitting side by side. They were all equals here. An old auntie was teaching a young foreign tourist how to properly flip a roti on the hot plate. The tourist dropped 3 in a row. Each time a roti fell, a collective "ooh" went up from the crowd, followed by booming laughter.
There was no judgment, only encouragement. It was a place where mistakes were not just allowed. They were celebrated with a good chuckle. It was a lesson in humility, served with a side of hilarious mishaps. I looked around and saw a sea of heads covered in colorful scarves. Everyone was focused on their task, yet completely connected to each other. The rhythmic sound of rolling pins, the sizzling of rotis on the giant tawa, and the constant hum of conversation created a unique symphony. It was the sound of seva, selfless service.
Here, service wasn't a chore, it was a celebration. It was a party where the entry ticket was just a willingness to help, and the reward was a feeling of belonging. And maybe, if you were lucky, you'd finally make a roti that was at least a little bit round.
Next, we moved to the vegetable section. Oh my goodness. If you think chopping one onion at home makes you cry, try being in a room with a mountain of them. I saw big, tough-looking men, with muscles bigger than my head, crying like they just watched the end of a sad movie. They were chopping onions like warriors, tears streaming down their faces, but with big smiles.
One uncle turned to me and said with tears in his eyes, "Son, these are not tears of sadness. These are tears of Seva."
I said, "Uncle G, for me, these are just tears of onion." The whole section burst out laughing, a beautiful, tear-filled, onion-scented laugh.
The teamwork was something else. A long line of people sat on mats, a mountain of potatoes and cauliflower in front of them. It was a vegetable assembly line powered by pure goodwill. Someone would peel the potatoes, pass them to the next person to wash, who then passed them to the chopping team.
I saw a lady in a fancy sari sitting next to a man in simple, worn-out clothes. They were chatting and laughing like old friends while chopping cauliflower. In the outside world, they might never even speak to each other. But here, they were part of the same team, the Great Vegetable Chopathon champions.
Of course, there were some funny mix-ups. I saw one gentleman who looked like a college professor, very seriously chopping potatoes into tiny, perfect cubes. He was so focused. The man next to him, a farmer, was chopping them into big, rustic chunks. They looked at each other's piles and the professor said, "Sir, your uniformity is lacking."
The farmer replied, "Brother, once it's in the stomach, it's all the same." The professor paused, looked at his tiny cubes, and then started laughing. He began chopping big, happy, rustic chunks just like the farmer. It was a small moment, but it said everything about this place.
The best part was that nobody was the boss. There was no manager shouting instructions. Everyone just knew what needed to be done. They saw a need and filled it. It's like the whole place ran on a silent, spiritual Wi-Fi that connected everyone. The password was Seva.
This experience teaches you that it doesn't matter if you are a CEO or a student. When you are chopping vegetables for langar, you are simply a sevadar, one who serves. And in that service, there is a strange and wonderful kind of freedom. Also, your hands will smell like onions for 3 days.
Finally, it was time to serve the langar. The simple, delicious food we had all helped prepare was ready. I was given a bucket of dal. My job was simple. Walk down the line of people sitting on the floor and pour dal into their steel plates. But then I saw her.
A little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, was also serving. She was carrying a small bowl of dal, taking her job very, very seriously. She would waddle up to each person, her eyes full of concentration, and carefully spoon a little dal onto their plate. She was so tiny, and the spoon was almost as big as her hand. She approached a big, serious-looking man. He had a stern face and looked like he never smiled. The little girl stood in front of him, holding her bowl with both hands. She looked up at him and said in the sweetest voice, "Uncle Dal?"
The man just nodded. As she carefully served him, a single drop of dal spilled onto the mat beside his plate. The girl's eyes went wide with panic. She looked like she had just made the biggest mistake of her life.
She looked at the man, her lip trembling, and whispered, "Sorry, Uncle." It was the cutest, most dramatic moment I had ever seen.
That's when the magic happened. The stern-looking man's face completely changed. It softened. He broke into a warm, gentle smile and looked at the little girl. He reached out and gently patted her head. "It's okay, my dear," he said, his voice suddenly thick with emotion. "You are doing God's work." And then I saw a tear roll down his cheek. This big, tough man was crying, not because he was sad, but because he was moved by the pure, innocent service of this little child. He was moved by the love in that tiny, spilled drop of dal.
Everyone around who saw this little exchange had a smile on their face. The air, which was already filled with the aroma of food, was now also filled with a feeling of overwhelming love.
It was a powerful reminder that humility and service are the greatest equalizers. In that moment, it didn't matter who that man was or what his story was. All that mattered was this beautiful connection between him and the little girl. It showed that the simplest acts of kindness, especially from a child, can break down the highest walls we build around our hearts. After the langar, our group sat together in a corner, our stomachs full and our hearts even fuller. We couldn't stop talking about the experience. My friend, who is always worried about his business targets, was laughing about his Australia-shaped roti. He said, "For the first time in years, I didn't think about my phone or my emails. I was just there, in the moment, failing at making rotis, and it was the most peaceful I felt." We all laughed, but we knew he was serious. The simple act of serving had washed away his stress, at least for a little while.
We looked at each other, our faces still glowing from the warmth of the kitchen and the community. We had arrived as a group of friends, but we were leaving as something more. We had reconnected, not by talking about our problems, but by working through them, side by side with strangers. There were small tears of emotion when we talked about the little girl and the man crying. There were big laughs when we remembered the onion chopping tears.
This Gurudwara adventure had become a bonding experience for us, strengthening our own relationships through shared service.
Sikhism teaches that you can find God through selfless service, and I think I finally understood what that meant. It's not about grand gestures. It's about chopping vegetables next to a stranger and sharing a laugh. It's about seeing the humanity in everyone, regardless of their background. It's about the humility of sitting on the floor and eating the same simple meal as everyone else. The values of unity and equality weren't just written in a holy book here. They were being lived out in every corner of this place, in every roti being served and every plate being washed.
As we were leaving, my friend joked, "You know, we traveled to all these famous temples and shrines, looking for God at the end of a long journey." He paused, then smiled. "But maybe God isn't just at the destination. Maybe God is right here in the kitchen, crying with us while we chop onions. Maybe God is in the laughter when a roti falls. Maybe God is in the simple act of sharing a meal together."
And we all laughed because it was funny, but also because deep down, we knew it was the most profound truth we had learned all day.